welcome to the Unlucky Frog Gaming Podcast. You are joined by your usual hosts here, Josh Hartley and Ben Porter. Ben, how are we doing?
We're doing good. We got an eclectic mix of things to talk about.
Yeah, we've got some serious things to talk about as well, actually. Yeah. So this being an incident that happened at GenCon. However, we'll cover off some lighter news items from the world of tabletop before we dive into that. So why don't we just get straight to it?
Yeah, so in their annual report, the CEO for Games Workshop, Kevin Roundtree, alludes to the fact that the company are exploring licensing for film and TV.
Okay. It's something they've kind of dabbled in the past. If I recall, wasn't there a Space Marine film?
Yeah, there was.
Had John Hurt in it, didn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was a fan project or not. I'll need to double check that.
Yeah.
But certainly, I don't think it released to a massive audience.
No, I don't think it was widely distributed. But
no.
So are they looking to pitch this? You reckon to what, like Hollywood then? Is that, or maybe TV, or
it's the thing is, right? As much as there's maybe a certain argument that the Warhammer stories are like pulp sci-fi and fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
The Horus Heresy,
yes,
series is a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah, and it's pretty highly regarded as well in science fiction.
Yeah, I mean, like, as you know, I'm an electrician.
Yep.
I was actually in a customer's house a few years ago, and I saw he had a load of the Horus Heresy books. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, you into Warhammer? And he says, no, I just read the books.
And the Black Library has been exceptionally successful for Games Workshop. Black Library being, of course, their publishing arm with all the fiction.
I think the Horus Heresy series is probably the most iconic.
Yeah.
But some of the fantasy novels they've done,
Gotrek and Felix did really well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that would lend itself perfectly to like a TV show, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That would who would you cast as Gotrek?
Well, I think the way to go would maybe to do it CGI.
You reckon?
Maybe do it CGI and have Brian Blessed do Gotrek.
I don't know, because I can kind of picture Tom Hiddleston being Felix, but like in person. He grew his hair long a bit.
Oh, dyed it blonde.
Yeah.
I could see that working.
He's kind of got that skinny sort of
Germanic look going on. Yeah.
Don't know who I'd have as Gotrek. Who would make a good, angry, naked dwarf?
It's a hard one to cast, but I suppose that the way they would do it is they would use all the sorts of camera tricks that they use for the Peter Jackson films with the dwarfs.
I think that's the remarkable thing about those Lord of the Rings films. I mean, the CGI was phenomenal for its day. Still looks pretty good, but most of the camera tricks to make certain characters look much shorter than they actually are, that's physical effects. That's not like post-editing or anything.
A lot of it was as simple as forced perspective.
Yeah.
Like and you can watch all this in the bonus features for the Lord of the Rings. The scene at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring where Frodo's in the cart with Gandalf.
Yeah.
The seat that Frodo's in.
Yeah.
It extends away out beyond the cart. But because they force the perspective so that you're looking at them from a certain angle, it looks like Elijah Wood's really small sitting next to Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
But he's not, he's just sitting really far back.
It's really clever.
Yeah.
It's just such a simple thing.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah.
But back to your question, I have no idea who you could cast as Gotrek.
Let's be realistic. It's probably going to be 40k license.
Probably.
Yeah. But we'll see how that pans out.
I would watch a Horus Heresy film or TV show.
Yeah, I'd definitely give it a go.
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, the thing is, like, they've got an absolute mine of material to use as well, right?
Oh, yeah,
like,
I mean, it's like
hundreds of books, right?
It's about 30 years in the making, so...
Yeah. So, they should be able to make something good out of that, right?
You'd hope so. I mean, they could still screw it up massively. That's still a possibility. Yeah.
Of course.
But it's interesting that they're exploring it. I'm a bit of a Games Workshop fanboy, but I maintain that Warhammer is one of the most iconic brands in the world. We were just having this discussion beforehand because you were saying that
Magic the Gathering apparently have been looking into like the old Hollywood blockbuster license as well, but it's struggled to get off the ground. I don't know, like, because you were saying it's maybe not visually quite as iconic as...
I don't think so.
I'd argue Jace, the character, people would probably recognise as being from Magic the Gathering.
Possibly Chandra as well.
Chandra as well, yeah.
But I guess the problem that I think they'll have with it is, outside of maybe a couple of characters, pretty much any creature or character from Magic, if you showed it to a punter on the street...
Aye, that's generic fantasy.
They'd be like, oh, it's a wizard, isn't it? Or something like that. Whereas if you show someone a Space Marine, more often than not, they're going to be able to tell you what it is.
Yeah.
Pretty iconic.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think the problem with Magic is because they've got all these different settings for it. You know, all the different planes of the multiverse with its different theme and flavors. Which one do you choose? Like, because
they have done novels for Magic, haven't they?
Yes, they used to do a novel for each set, and they still release a lot of fiction on the website. But
any good?
I've never tried reading them, if I'm being perfectly honest. I hear some people really like it. It's not my thing. It's not why I'm interested in Magic. To be frank, I don't really care that much.
This is where Magic and Warhammer are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum from one another, because most people, if you ask them how they got involved in Warhammer, it's like, oh, I love the setting or the story.
Yeah.
Whereas Magic, it's people want to play
the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's maybe a few reasons that Warhammer's probably more conducive to telling a story.
Well, we'll find out all in good time. This is just purely speculative. It's just the CEO saying it's something that they're exploring, but they're getting a big deal now. So, they've been a big deal for a while, but
they're a huge deal now.
Yeah. So, watch this space. Watch this space. What else has been happening in the tabletop sphere? Spherage.
We spoke on the GenCon episode about a game that Fantasy Flight are releasing called Keyforge.
Yes, the new Richard Garfield unique game.
So this is the next announcement, is that Fantasy Flight have said that unique games, trademark, is something that they're going to be punting now.
Yes. So what other unique games, TM, are going to be coming out?
This one is called Discovery Lands Unknown. It's going to be designed by Fantasy Flight. So right away, outside of the unique games thing, that this really grabbed my
Unique Games TM.
Sorry, Unique Games TM. This grabbed my attention because it's the first game that I've seen Fantasy Flight do that isn't sci-fi or fantasy.
See, what you told me this the other day, and I've been racking my brain since, and I still can't think of one that's not fantasy or science fiction. So it's a fair point.
Yeah.
So what do we do in Discovery?
This is an attempt to bring the very popular survival genre of video games to the tabletop.
Okay.
So there's going to be exploration, a day and night cycle, you've got different characters, but allegedly every copy of the game is going to be completely unique.
Yes.
So you and I could each buy a copy of Discovery.
And it'll be completely different.
Yep. Well, maybe not completely different.
Different enough.
Yeah.
Different.
Yeah. So it's an interesting prospect.
It's a neat idea.
Whether or not it's going to encourage people to buy several copies, I don't know.
Depends on how good the game is, I guess.
Yeah. I guess what's happened here is that other companies in the industry have looked at the success of legacy games.
Yeah.
And they're thinking how they can riff off of that sort of thing. And this is essentially an evolution of that.
Do we think this game is one where you open it up, you play the game, and each copy is completely unique? Like, will you ever play the game again, or is it kind of like a bit like Legacy, like when it's done, it's done?
No, I think the idea with unique games is that you can still play them. It's just that everyone's copy is special.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Logistically must be an absolute nightmare.
Yep.
To try and sort that out, like trying to manufacture enough components and then making sure that each pack gets different ones.
When we were first talking about this the other day, you'd made the point that like only a company of Fantasy Flight size could actually do this.
Yeah. No, an independent publisher could not pull this kind of thing off. Even like one of the middle-sized companies in the industry couldn't pull this off. This would have to be Fantasy Flight, Wizards of the Coast, or Games Workshop.
Yeah.
Basically.
Pretty much. So it'll be interesting to see what's in store for us there. It looks very pretty, like really nice art style. Bit of a departure in theme for Fantasy Flight, as we were saying. And I think that they're aiming to launch that towards the end of the year.
Yes. So we'll pick up a copy, or maybe multiple, and
might be good to at least have two.
Yeah, just to compare and contrast.
Yeah, being a little bit cynical here, I don't think the differences between copies are going to be massive. It's going to be slight variations.
You reckon?
I think so.
All right. Well, I mean, time will tell, right? So we'll see. So, shall we get to the main meat?
The topic of the week.
Right. So, there was an incident at GenCon. Or not even at GenCon, actually. In Indianapolis at the time of GenCon. Involving... we know that the victim of the assault was a convention goer. Yeah. And the alleged assaulter was also a convention goer as well. Yeah. What's happened is...
Well, it's actually worth saying there are two victims here, technically, because someone had their property damaged.
That's a very good point, yes. So what had happened... Where do we begin with this? Do we explain who Jeremy is first?
I feel like he's like Voldemort. Like, I kind of don't want to mention his name just in case I make him more powerful.
As long as we don't mention it 3 times and he appears on our podcast, that's fine. Right, so Jeremy is a chap who has a couple of YouTube channels. Yeah. The Quartz Ring, which is all about these crane grabbing machines. But I think he's better known as being the MTGHQ guy, or Unsleeved Media guy.
You say that the Quartz Ring's about crane grabbing machines.
It's now
identity politics.
Yeah, this is it, right? So he was one of the first big Magic the Gathering channels, and I used to subscribe to it, and I thought his channel was pretty good. He did lots of unboxings. He was doing this thing where he was there's a magic...
I didn't realise you used to subscribe to
I did, yeah. And he used to he had this thing where he was trying to collect each of there's a product for Magic the Gathering called a Fat Pack, which is like a box with 9 booster packs in. And in years gone by, it actually had the novel or novella that was associated with that set in it as well. Yeah. They stopped doing that now. But that's what he used to get. He was trying to compile a playlist of him opening each and every one. Yeah. I thought it was a pretty good channel. However, he started having these rants and almost going after other characters in the Magic the Gathering YouTube. Yeah, the YouTube scene. Notably, the professor from Tolarian Community College, who is probably the biggest Magic the Gathering channel, I think.
I think he's certainly the...
He's the one you recognise for a start.
Yeah.
So, and as someone who doesn't play the game, that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Wedge from the Mana Source as well, who again has been doing this for a very long time, and his videos were getting progressively more vitriolic, aggressive. He was encouraging his supporters to go to this convention that Wedge was at and ask Wedge, why are you so fat, at a public Q&A that he was attending, which people did, and that's a horrible thing.
I just think it's phenomenal that people actually follow through with that.
Well, okay, but this is how serious this got, right? So whenever he was doing a video that was ranting about someone, and I think it's a fair comparison to make with Steve Bannon. You know, the Infowars and that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's been a real rise in the past few years, and there's no other word for them, in these alt-right channels, where I think for anyone that's maybe not familiar with the term alt-right, basically it's a movement within conservative politics to try and make conservative politics attractive to a younger audience.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, so you've got people like Milo Yiannopoulos, like you say, Alec Jones from Infowars.
Yeah.
So it's people that aren't your typical crusty NRA supporting Republicans, or your sherry swilling Tories.
Yeah.
Like Milo Yiannopoulos, he's quite an outrageous character. For one, he's like a 30-something gay man who's he's quite foul-mouthed, so again quite different from what you would expect from a conservative small C.
And and this is certainly what Jeremy was doing, because he was taking exception to the very fact that Wizards of the Coast, the folks who make Magic the Gathering, were actively trying to promote women, people of colour, people like gay people, or people gender identities within the Magic the Gathering community. He was taking exception to this as well, and it came to a head in November last year. And what happened was one of the people he would go after was a prominent cosplayer, Christine Sprankle. You've probably, if you're a fan of Magic the Gathering, you may well have actually seen photos of her. She would go to the Magic the Gathering Grand Prix, cosplaying as various characters from the Magic the Gathering universe. And she had a Patreon page, right? And people...
Common thing for cosplayers.
Yeah, people would support her, and that's fine. But according to Jeremy, not. That wasn't on. And it got to the point where she was getting harassed so much by Jeremy's supporters that she quit social media and declared, I'm quitting social media because of the level of harassment I've been getting. Pretty much, I can't remember if in a post she identified Jeremy and his channel or not, but pretty much everyone knew that was why. And as a consequence of this action, one, it all blew up over YouTube. Everyone had something to say about it. We actually, because of course we were doing the podcast at the time, and we sat down and had a chat whether we were even going to cover the story or not. We decided not to for a couple of reasons. One, we felt there was a lot of people talking about this already, and we're probably not going to add anything positive or insightful to this noise.
There was a feeling possibly that we would have been really just bandwagoning. Yeah.
And the second reason, it was around the time when Charlotte was first coming on the podcast, and we kind of thought it was having a woman come on our podcast and to be sprung immediately on like gender politics and identity is kind of like the board game equivalent of asking a female rock star, what's it like being a woman in a band? You know, it kind of felt a bit. It is. Don't get me wrong. It's an important subject. But
maybe some people do want to hear people talk about these things, but certainly, I think equally it can be exhausting being asked those questions all the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, the three of us had a chat about it, and we decided it was for the best not to cover the story.
Yeah.
As things unfolded, Wizards of the Coast actually took action. Amongst several other people, they actually slapped Jeremy with a lifetime ban of all sanctioned events and blocked him from Magic the Gathering Online, which he was particularly annoyed about because he had spent thousands of dollars on cards on it. You can't help but laugh.
Yeah.
So, and you know, as a consequence of these actions as well, Jeremy himself got a lot of harassment and hate as well, and he was quite vocal in how he felt it was unfair and unjustified.
Because I think it is worth emphasising this, that, you know, no matter who you agree or disagree with in this scenario, we can get into that a bit more later on.
You can probably read between the lines as to where me and Ben stand.
Yeah. But no matter who you agree or disagree with, there are nutters on both sides of the debate.
Yes, and harassing someone, or as we're going to get to, assaulting someone physically is just unacceptable.
No, it's not an appropriate response.
Mm-hmm. So that was last year. That was last November. Flash forward to GenCon, which Jeremy is, of course, attending. And he, after one of the days in the convention, is hanging out at one of the bars in Indianapolis.
Yep.
He is approached by a man who... Well, did you read, like, the man actually put his arm around him?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And said, "Are you Jeremy from Unsleeved Media?"
Yeah. Jeremy
said yes. And this man immediately starts wailing into him.
He got him in a headlock, and this isn't just what Jeremy said. There've been a couple of witnesses that have since confirmed this. He got Jeremy in a headlock, punched him repeatedly in the head, and said, "I'm going to kill you." 4 people had to restrain the assailant. Jeremy ran into the bar.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, what are you going to do when
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be my reaction to someone punching me in the head. But,
no.
Yeah.
But there we go.
Yeah.
You're a very different man to Jeremy in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
But so he runs into the bar. The assailant goes after Jeremy, but is blocked by one of the witnesses, and then the assailant punched a glass panel,
breaking it, probably injuring himself as well. I'm guessing
that's your second victim there, because there's property damage as well. And then he ran off into the night. So,
Jeremy has been very vocal about this incident.
Surprise!
Yeah. And we are once again at the internet being at its finest. Yeah. Now, a couple of things have happened. Jeremy gave a description of the alleged assaulter, and apparently someone has been identified by people on the internet, but the police, as far as I'm aware anyway, as of this recording, haven't charged anyone. No one's been formally identified by the authorities. So while this name is out in the public domain, I don't want to name this person, because quite frankly, this could be a case of mistaken identity.
It does happen.
And I don't want to sort of fan the flames of this person being harassed as well.
Yeah. We know that he was definitely assaulted by someone. I mean, there's images of Jeremy on the internet where his eyes are all bloodshot and he's got cuts and abrasions on him where he's been attacked. But whether or not it's the person that speculation is pointing to, we can't say that, because as believers in democracy, it would be irresponsible for us to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Innocent until proven guilty and all that.
Exactly. So, we're not gonna discuss the identity of the assaulter. However, there's a couple of things to consider here. I mean, for me, one of the sad things about what happened last year, and just a general pattern that's emerging, is how extreme opinions in politics and ethics are starting to permeate their way into our thing. Like, this is I mean, I don't know about you, one of the reasons I do this hobby is as a way to relax and unwind, right? I don't want to think about heavy things.
I think there's maybe a bit more to it than that. I think we in particular do this. We relax and unwind, but it also, maybe waxing lyrical a wee bit here, but I've got quite a strategic brain.
Yeah.
And there's a little itch that this hobby scratches that doesn't quite get scratched
by anything
by some
else.
of the other stuff that I do.
Sure. I mean, the point is, what I'm trying to say is, one of the reasons I'm attracted to this hobby is as a form of escapism. The real world's rubbish. Not to put such a fine point on it. It can be rubbish, right? Yeah. And sometimes you don't want to have to. Sometimes you want to get away from it.
Sure.
Whereas events like this happening sort of on the perimeter of GenCon brings it back into our hobby. We're now talking about it and discussing the greater implications of it, and I think that's sad. I don't like when I sit down and play a tabletop game with someone. I don't care what sort of political opinions or whatever. I stopped watching MTG Headquarters or Unsleeved Media, as they were known in the latter years, because he stopped talking about Magic the Gathering and started talking about why he believed Wizards of the Coast shouldn't be promoting women to play or in their stories or whatever. That's not what I'm in. Like, one, I disagree, and two, that's not what I'm interested in.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah,
like I don't want to hear a misogynist's opinion. That might sound quite ignorant, but I know how I feel, and he's not going to change my mind.
But this is freedom of speech, right? Is that you have the right to say these things, but there's no obligation upon other people to listen to you.
Right.
Well, it's true, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's one thing. The other thing is, what responsibility did GenCon have about this? Because my gut instinct is nil. It didn't happen on the convention grounds.
Right,
however, Jeremy was certainly in Indianapolis.
Right, just to quickly weigh in on this,
Sorry.
The GenCon Code of Conduct does state that they have a right to step in in cases of harassment and things like that take place out with their campus.
Right, yeah.
Because you could get harassed on your way back to your hotel or something like that, in which case GenCon has a responsibility.
Or they have elected to take on that responsibility.
Yeah.
I would argue, while Jeremy was in Indianapolis attending GenCon, and the person who is widely thought to have committed the assault is also believed to have been attending GenCon. While they were, it didn't happen at the convention site. It was completely out with their control.
It was like 1 a.m.
and
as well.
But one of the immediate reactions to this event was, why aren't GenCon doing something? Why aren't they making a statement about this?
Well, they did make a statement.
Exactly, they did.
They made a statement saying that they were cooperating with the Indianapolis police in the investigation, but that the Indianapolis police had said that at this stage they didn't need their help.
Okay.
In which case, there's nothing more that GenCon can do at the moment.
Yeah.
Or
need to do.
But they issued a statement saying that they are cooperating with the investigation, which is the most that anyone can do in a police investigation.
Yeah.
Now, as to the incident itself, as much as we both completely disagree with Jeremy's politics,
and pretty much on every level,
I also completely disagree with someone being assaulted, first of all, on any grounds, but I do particularly take issue with someone being assaulted just because someone doesn't like their beliefs.
Yeah, that's a very rocky and nasty road to start going down when you think it's okay to take like that sort of physical action just because of someone's opinion. There's
a phrase for it, Vigilante Justice.
Yeah.
And it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous, not just wrong, it's very dangerous because it essentially puts into the hands of the person the power of judge, jury, and executioner. Because some people have responded by saying that it's okay to punch a Nazi. That, and there's further dangerous implications with that. First of all, who's deciding who's a Nazi?
Yeah.
And second of all, who's deciding on how severe the Nazis' statements have to be in order to merit some form of corporal punishment? So, I don't think that you can say that you believe in democracy and be holding beliefs like that.
I completely agree. I can't pretend like there is a part of me that's a little glad that this guy got his comeuppance, because he's quite evidently made some people's lives miserable.
He has, and this is the flip side to this whole debate. Is if I had the two guys in front of me, for some reason, I would turn to Jeremy and say, first of all, you can't go around saying these horrible things and not expect some form of reprisal for them.
Yeah.
This is what's happened.
Yeah.
I urge you to think very carefully about what you're saying, particularly in a public platform from now on. Mm-hmm. And then I would turn to the assaulter. You can't go around bashing people just because you don't agree with what they say.
Yeah.
It's completely undemocratic.
Mm-hmm.
There's a process for debate. First of all, this guy does a fine enough job of making himself look like an arsehole. without you feeling like you have to.
You have to somehow amplify
that.
Because
this is the thing, right? Is they've now made him a martyr.
Yeah. No.
So they in trying to exact justice or vengeance upon this guy for some perceived insult, what they've done is they've vindicated in a lot of ways what he's saying. This whole thing about conservative white men are under attack and all that.
Yeah.
They are. Because you've attacked them.
Yeah. I know. It's frustrating. The only thing I will I do want to make this. I want to ask you this actually. Right.
Okay.
We don't know the exact motives for what this guy did. It's assumed that it's because Jeremy.
I would be very surprised if there was another reason for that. He's a very public figure.
Yeah.
He's very vocal. He has very controversial beliefs.
Yeah. But for all we know, Jeremy might have targeted someone that was particularly close to him. Now, what I want to ask, is if Jeremy had targeted Charlotte in the way that he had targeted Christine Sprankle, or if he targeted me in the same way that he targeted Wedge.
Yeah.
How would you feel about that? Could you maybe start to get into why this guy acted?
I would definitely have taken it personally. I will be completely honest and say that I'm not slow to anger. Mm-hmm. I do get riled by things.
Your jimmies get rustled.
And in a lot of ways, things that are personal attacks to me don't bother me in the same way that attacks upon people that I care about do.
And I think a lot of people are like that as well. And I think this is why, one of the reasons why we're sort of seeing this escalation in the two extreme ends of politics. Whereas, you've got people who, okay, they're not gay themselves, or they're not women, or they're not people of colour or whatever, but they know people and care about people who are, and that's kind of why they're the nasty way of saying it is social justice warriors. But what I mean. That's why some people are getting like that. And then you've got people on the other end of the spectrum sort of rising to it. The other thing I think is happening is the internet has given everyone a false sense that, you can say whatever you like without consequence.
Well, you've got this echo chamber effect where people think that they're only talking to people that feel the way that they feel, and that's partly true.
Yeah, I mean, this is how Facebook is built, isn't it? Yeah. You tend to be friends with people who feel the same, like you're similarly anyway.
Yeah, and what happens, I think, is that you do get people are becoming more and more polarised. And I think there is this perception that you have to be one or the other.
Which is absolute nonsense.
Well, Noam Chomsky actually said that one of the greatest forms of tyranny is not to eradicate debate, but to limit the spectrum of debate, which is something that we're seeing happening with the the rise of the alt-right and these sorts of groups is that there is this perception that you have to be in one camp or the other, that there is no middle ground anymore.
And that's ridiculous for a number of reasons. I mean, one, I think most people are quite moderate in their beliefs, really.
I think so.
Two, politics and ethics and life is so much more complicated than I'm completely left-wing all the time or I'm completely right-wing all the time. I have personal views that would be very left-wing in some respects, but some that are, some may consider like middle ground or right-wing. Really.
Well, I mean, I was talking about this recently. I mean, because as you know, and people that know, I'm a Christian. I go to church. So the perception from that for a lot of people would be that, oh, you're right-wing then, and well, no, I'm a socialist.
Yeah.
So I've
exactly.
Got I get this weird like Captain Pugwash type situation where I'm like reviled by both sides. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's how people are.
Yeah.
We make our own minds up about each individual topic. Just because you think gay marriage might be okay doesn't mean that you're also a communist.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But that's kind of like the ridiculous sort of assumptions that are being made now. Mm-hmm. Like, you believe this one thing, or you must believe this other thing as well. That's completely unrelated.
Mm. Yeah. It's quite. I did not think that we would be talking identity politics
when we started.
11 months into.
I know. This was heavy.
Yeah.
But this is it. It goes back to my point. Like, I suppose, as much as I don't like the fact that this is creeping into the hobby I love, is it inevitable? Is it unavoidable? Like,
I think it is, because it's real people that are behind these games. It's real people that are playing these games, and you can only avoid those people bringing their real baggage and their real issues into the things that they do for so long, is the reality of it. And although we talk about hobby games and tabletop gaming being quite a niche thing, GenCon is basically a takeover of downtown Indianapolis for a week. That's no small feat.
That's huge. The open play area is their football, like American football stadium.
Yeah. So the reality is that in tabletop gaming, it's as varied a spectrum of demographics as any town or city.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, it's not as if that it's purely made up of a bunch of
white middle class men.
Yeah, because it's not. Because there's so much more to that. It's so much more diverse than that. But people talk about diversity and championing diversity, and I don't think they fully understand all that goes with that. And it's like, when you champion diversity, you're opening the door to people that will disagree with you. Yeah.
It's the right thing to do, I think.
It is the right thing to do. And do you know what? This might seem condescending to a lot of people, but you don't have to agree with everything that someone says to be their friend. Now, I'm not saying that you should go and be friends with Jeremy.
I don't think anyone should be friends with that man.
Probably not. He does not.
It's a miracle anyone is.
But we need to find a better way of debating with one another. And I dare say that as much as the internet has been a facilitator of this show, it's caused a lot of problems as well.
Yeah.
Because people, I think, are accustomed to getting up on a soapbox on Twitter or Facebook. And the reality is of these things, as good as they are, no one goes on Facebook to have their minds changed about something.
No.
It just doesn't happen. When have you ever seen someone read the comments section of a blog post and gone, do you know what? You're right about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never gone through like YouTube comments and thought this was a worthwhile way of spending my time.
No.
Anyway,
it's like the internet version of looking under a rock, going to the YouTube comments.
Yeah, don't do it.
Yeah.
And on that cheery note, guys, thank you very much for listening. That's been a very serious episode, so I hope you enjoyed it all the same and maybe found it insightful. If you want to share your thoughts with us, please get in touch. But yeah, be nice to each other.
Yeah, be excellent to each other.
Yeah.
I think, we'll be back on topic talking about gaming stuff next week. But
more fun things.
We felt that we had to weigh in on this one.
But yeah, hope you enjoyed it, guys. And until next time, take care.
Hi everyone, it's Charlotte from the Unlucky Frog Gaming Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Now be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. All you need to do is search Unlucky Frog Gaming. You can also show your support for the Unlucky Frog through Patreon. To find out more information, check out our website, www.unluckyfrog.com. Thanks, bye!